Yeah, so if you give a fuck about your life and about your livelihood, you'll spend time in a law library researching your case once you get in trouble because each case is different. No two cases are the same. There's thousands and thousands of case law on cases that have been overturned. And the thing is, a lot of times the law books cite cases that are favorable to the prosecution. So you have to really look for the cases that are contrary because they're far and few between, but they are out there where somebody has used something to basically get a case overturned. A lot of times, the information I've gotten that's been beneficial has been from other inmates who have gotten their cases overturned and they're coming back on a writ. And their cases aren't even published, and they're not going to get published because it's not going to favor the system. So the case is usually in a motion, and I try to make a copy of it. And that's how I was able to get my case overturned. Not overturned, but get it reduced was because the particular guy was coming back on a writ and fighting his case, and I cited paperwork from his actual case that wasn't published in a legal book or a legal a pamphlet or a handout. But anyways, this is one of the books I still have from prison. It's a notebook I used to carry around with me everywhere. It had a lot of different references of notes and stuff. You see, I highlighted a bunch of stuff in here, and I used a lot of this just to keep myself sharp. I'd read over this over and over again, and try to educate myself. Prisons in prison. Um, I have stuff in here from the Black's Law Dictionary. Um, just a lot of notes, man. And there's words that were being used and things that take place in the courtroom that don't take place in a regular everyday setting. And it's good to know what you're dealing with and not sit there and just be a fool. Um, Black's Law Dictionary, first first edition and fifth edition are the best books you can ever read as far as knowledge. The words go back to the common law, which is what our country was founded on, and it breaks down the legalese of each word. And once you read the meaning of a lot of these words, you realize that you don't know shit. The words that you're reading in Webster's dictionary are so watered down that they don't give you the true meaning of the word. Um, Black's Law Dictionary, it goes to the origins of a lot of these words, and once you find out what the original meaning is, it will empower you. You know, you'll be able to use language that will elevate you consciously and put you on a whole nother level. You know, conversation as far as guys, people thinking they got game, talking slick, that ain't shit, man, when you talk about doing business and dealing with law, because the law, words are king, and basically a word can mean a difference between you getting 7 years and you getting 20 years. It's knowing the language. And like I said earlier, a lot of these lawyers are not going to do the research that you would do. They have a life, they have other cases. They have an assistant that goes through and they look up a few things a day on your case, but that's about it. They're not sleeping, worried about you getting out. So you need to get away from that damn TV or the dice game or domino game or card game or basketball, whatever the case, sports. And if you give a fuck about your life and you don't want to sit there and be mad at the state or the government, go do some research, man. Go down to that law library. Every institution is required to have a certain amount of books, and they're required to give you so much time in a law library. And if they don't do it, you can write them up, and you have a right to have access to legal material. This is one of the books I had in there. It's a smaller dictionary, legal dictionary. It's called Barron's Law. If you notice, I've read this whole thing. I read this whole book, and I highlighted things that stood out. And I spent a lot of time reading in there. I didn't, I read and I worked out, but I didn't fuck around. I wasn't in there entertaining bullshit conversations, and I was trying to better myself, man. And this is how you do it. And these words empowered me, and it gave me strength, and it allowed me to, when I didn't have anybody giving me any support, it made me feel empowered. It made me not want to give up. A lot of times people go to prison, they just give up, and they get out, and they commit another crime because they're just frustrated. They just say fuck life. Origins of Common Law, very good book. This book, I highlighted in here too. Read this whole thing a couple times, and it talks about the Magna Carta. It talks about common law. It talks about church versus state, ecclesiastical courts, church courts. It has a lot of different things. It talks about just how a lot of this law came about from just dealing with this land, and basically the commoners and the peasants. It's all related to property. So this is one of the foundations, and this is one of the things that our law is intertwined with: common law, administrative law, and commercial law. And commercial law plays a big part because everything's based on monetary. If you don't know, UCC. I don't have a UCC book in front of me here, but Google it, look it up, get informed. That's a big part of our law too. De facto government. You're probably wondering, what the hell is de facto government? Well, go look it up. I read the book, took notes on it, educated myself on a de facto government, the difference between martial law, military necessity. A lot of this stuff is going on right now. You guys are sitting here watching the debates, and you're listening to all this bullshit. Well, get some game about yourself. How many of you guys are familiar with the Federal Reserve Act? What about HR 192? House Resolution 192? You probably don't have a clue, but you don't have no need to, because life is good, and you can basically watch gossip channels and Snapchat and all that stuff, which is great. But if you're doing dirt, you run around drinking your alcohol, you're getting high, you're committing crimes, you get your ass caught up in a case, and you're going to start crying, and you're going to get your wig split because you're uneducated and you don't have a clue on what the fuck is going on in the courtroom. It's not a classroom, it's a courtroom, and they're not there to teach you, they're there to bust your head. So get some game about yourself. Read up on de facto law. The Underground Lawyer. If you haven't got an introduction to the law, this is a great introduction. I actually got this book later in my bid, so I was already educated on a lot of stuff that he talks about in here. But this book is by Michael Lewis Mintz. It's an eye-opener for those who have no clue about what's going on with the law, the courts. But you'd be surprised as far as once you start reading what things are. Do you know anything about the ABA, American Bar Association? Do you know what it means to be considered to have an attorney? Do you know that categorizes you as an imbecile, a ward of the court? You know that the court's babysitting you when you go into prison? Do you know that they're basically housing you like you're going to daycare? You know that you've been unable to handle your own affairs, so they set up a trust fund and they manage all your money for you? Yeah, they're doing all this in prison. They got everything covered for you. You got your meals, you got your toilet tissue, your toothpaste. They got a little mini commissary in there that they're balling off of, and they're paying you minimum wage, below minimum wage. Ain't no minimum wage in there. And you're working like a slave if you decide to go and get a job in there, which the jobs seem enticing, because if you have no family support, you got to do something. So you spend all your time working, and you don't get a chance to actually work on rehabilitating yourself. And then when you get out, you think, you know, I've been working in prison, I'm gonna work on the street. And when you go fill out that application and it says ex-felon, you're fucked, buddy. So it's a trade-off. I didn't work in prison, you know, and I didn't get out balling either. You know, I had to bust my ass to get on my feet and just utilize, you know, contacts that I had that were 10 years old to try to make things happen. But that was a sacrifice. Either I could have been working to try to save up some fucking little peanuts, or I could have been educating myself, and I chose to do this. I chose to educate myself. So to those out there committing crimes, hey, you know, I'm not condoning it and I'm not supporting it, but I'm telling you right now, you better get some game about yourself, because you get up in that court and whatever little money you got saved up, you're going to try to hire some attorney. He's going to take that, go to the bar, maybe buy some, you know, wheels for his car or send his wife on a trip, but he's not going to really give a 2 cents about you. So you best educate yourself on this law, man, because I did, and it knocked 2 years off my sentence. And yeah, it might not be a whole lot, but 2 years is fucking a lot when you're on the streets. So hey, take time, wisen up, and spend some time at your local library. You can look up a lot of this stuff is on the internet, and get some game about yourself.